Okay. If you are in this video, wow, you should, I don't know, I should have like an Easter egg thing in here, or some sort of surprise. Like, really don't expect many people to watch all 6 videos now, I guess it is. But if you're here, that's it. I'll give you a hint on the quiz. So the answer to question 1 is study. That was mean, wasn't it? Yep, no help, no help. Well, anyway, last video. Okay, this is just to wrap things up. So, let's see. Just all the little things you want to look at the end. Like you can assume the denominator of Neville would be 0. So I'm looking at that now and I'm like, man, Mrs. Anderson, you should have mentioned that earlier. We've got that the divide method that you have to write, and depending on the fraction you give it, you may end up dividing by 0 for some of these, or what if someone creates one with 0? Guess what? You don't have to worry about any of that. It is someone else's job to make sure the denominator is never 0. So if you have some code that's keeping track of that, great. If you don't add it. Don't add more than what you need to. Just again, this reduce method, if you are going to work for those 2 points, I would expect you to work for them. You can do some thought on how you would reduce something like 4/8. You're going to need some sort of looping. Keep in mind, and some way to get bigger numbers. So again, I mentioned before, you can look online for some algorithms for pseudocode, but don't copy code, and if you do, cite it. Give a URL and a comment of your code, something. Don't pawn it off as something you originally wrote, please. Kudos to you if you do the reduce. Now, if you do the reduce method, make sure you go and you put it places. After you create a fraction in this fraction constructor, call the reduce before you leave that method. So in that case, even if I create a new fraction like this, 4,8, it's going to go ahead and store it as 1/2, not as 4/8, because I reduce it at the end of my fraction constructor. If you're going to do reduce, again, put it in your add, put it in your divide, put it in your multiply, put it in your subtract. After you've created that new fraction, make sure you reduce it before you return it. So, and it even says returns fraction in lowest terms. So to call the reduce method from within this fraction class, you don't attach a calling object, although I think you can say this dot reduce if that helps you think about it. So you can just call the reduce method from within one of these methods, or you can possibly put on the you don't want this dot reduce, now that I think about it. I think I take all that back. I think you do want a calling object on it. If you don't, it's going to reduce the, yeah. So create the new object, and let's say you call the new object new fraction. That's the actual name of it, new fraction. Then you would call new fraction dot reduce. And then you would return that new fraction. So keep that in mind. In the toString, I would make sure that if the fraction is 1/1, which is what 1/2 plus 1/2 should end up being stored as 1/1, your toString should really be cleaned up to only print the 1, not 1/1. So make a check to see if that denominator is a 1 before you blindly send this. So it's a simple if-else. So if the denominator is 1, just send back the numerator in a string. Else, go ahead and format it with the slash in the numerator and denominator. So those are a couple cleanup items, and then I'm going to look at the grading rubric. So it says use this. So we did some examples in class. I had in a previous video in the point class, I used this in my constructor. I didn't talk about this too much in the constructor. but it is in the video, and you could probably pause the video and peek at it to get a reminder. So we've got these methods, add, subtract. I'm looking, see, so this is the important part, that you can make the compare to method without implementing comparable. And make sure you do that piece, because that's part of that point, that you implement the comparable. The reduce method is correct. And then readable with your name, indents, descript variable names, and comments. So go back and add some comments that would help you also remember some of the terminology. Just hit the auto indent before you submit. And really here you've actually been given the variable names, and again this is the end, so I'm not sure I would change it. But on the AP exam, you're going to be given information like this where you're given a header, and they really expect you to use this name. So even though I've been using the names in my examples, this and that, this you can use, but here they've called that parameter that gets passed a fraction. They didn't call it that. So you really should be using these names that are given to you to help you prepare a little bit more for using names that you don't get to choose, if that makes sense. I'm just looking around. So I can't recall some of the things that students get confused on from last year, but take your time, really go back and add those comments to help you. This is a big step. I mean, the object-oriented coding. It's a big piece of Java and what this programming language is about, and so this is a big deal to get through this project, and it's a nice one to have, to save, to refer to, because it has so many key elements in it with the compare to, the equals, and all these things. So take some time, go back to your fraction class, be proud that you're at the end, and if you're really stuck still on something, we have the quiz Monday, Tuesday, but I will take some questions before about fraction on those days. I've changed the due date to Tuesday night, so you can ask some last minute questions in class Monday, Tuesday, in my class anyway, but don't expect to have time to actually work on the lab. So you need to really come prepared with your questions, and probably better yet is just to email me if you have specific questions. And I'll be after school on Tuesday as well. You could finish it up then, but good luck. Don't cheat. Don't do it. Don't copy. Don't do it. And have fun. Have some fun. All right, enjoy the day off tomorrow and the long weekend. See ya.